You're listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, your host. I'm thrilled to be with you. And today I have as my special guest, Miss Tamika L. Sims. She's an author, a book coach, and a survivor. Tamika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you. So I understand what an author is. Tell me exactly, what is a book coach?
So what I do is I help individuals write, release, and publish their stories. And I do that in a few different ways. So individuals can come to me if they have just an idea, and so I can help them really sort of create the content, develop the chapters, the title, and move them through the self-publishing process. Or they may have already had the book written, but they need someone to look at it. So I also offer editing services. So at any phase of the book writing or book publishing process, I am able to help an individual release their story to market.
Okay, so are you also a ghostwriter?
I do not do any ghostwriting. I had that experience, Mel, with one project, and I told myself I would never ever do it again. It was a great experience. It was a powerful story, but it just took so much out of me and the individual. So I said, you know what? I'm one and done with this.
Well, listen, a lot of people need your services. How about telling people how they can get in contact with you?
So the easiest way is my website, which is www.inkpendiva.com. Ink pen like the ink pen, diva like Mariah Carey. That's how I like to describe that. So inkpendiva.com, or they can send an email to Tamika, Tamika at inkpendiva.com.
All right, I like that a lot. All right, you also say that you are a survivor. Talk to us about that.
So I was in an almost 10-year abusive relationship. I'm originally from South Carolina, but I've been in Vegas for the past few years. And so I met a gentleman when I was in my early 20s who was a deacon in the church at the time. And of course, I was just starting out on my spiritual walk. And so there was an alignment there as far as both of us being on fire for God, if you will. But over the course of our relationship, it turned emotionally abusive, spiritually abusive, financially abusive, meaning that he would try to control the money, any financial resources we got or I got, because he couldn't hold down a job. And then, of course, with the spiritual abuse, it was more about him using scripture to keep me subservient in the relationship. A lot of it was hidden behind let's just pray about it. God's going to work it out. You don't want the devil to get in between what God could possibly doing, and all of that sort of language that we hear in churches today. And so eventually our relationship turned physically abusive, and that there was an attempted murder suicide of my life, as well as he, and with that, he was actually going to kill me, and then go and kill himself. And so we actually had some very violent incidences towards the end of our relationship. So,
boy, very sorry to hear that. Very sorry to hear that you had to go through that. Do you counsel other ladies, and do you help other folks having gone through that?
So the way that I'm not a counselor, like that was not my path. My path was through storytelling, which is what I wrote my first book about, was about that relationship. And so what I do is I'm a free giver of my story. So if I see or read something, or something comes across the news, which I've been seeing a lot more lately, of stories where women are being killed or, dismembered and that kind of thing at the hands of their abuser. So I try to use those moments to actually share my story, but not just from the standpoint of being a victim, but just understanding for someone that may be watching or listening that there is life after domestic violence, but you have to put yourself in a position of where you want it, right? You have to want to live again. You have to want to love again. You have to want to, be a better woman with the information that you've learned from being in that relationship. So that's the way that I do that. Is I have no problem sharing my story. It's very unfiltered, because I believe that that's the only way that people are truly going to get the help, is to see someone that's been in the same shoes that they've been walking in, but also allowing them to see that this is what can happen if you continually choose yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, let's talk a little bit about your career as an author.
Yeah.
All right, how many books have you authored?
So I have written 6 books. My most recent book was released September of 2022. And so
Okay.
that book was actually titled Ink Pen Diva, The Truth Behind My Pen. So I started my book writing journey in 2011. So I've been published for more than a decade. I'm authoring 6 books along the way. My predominant genre that I write in is nonfiction because I just believe, like the Mark Twain quote says, real life is stranger than fiction. You don't have to make you don't have to make any stories up, Mel. You just have to keep on living. And as you keep on living, you just gain the experiences that you can put in a book if you choose to do so. So, as I said, I wrote my first book about my experience in an abusive relationship. And so that book was dual purpose. One, for me to tell my story of how victims, particularly in the faith community, can be impacted in domestic violence, but to also be a voice for survivors who would never have the courage to tell their story. So from there, and then really a couple of years later, so I didn't start my business until 2013 because I needed a couple of years to really sort of build my career as an author,
Yes.
understanding what that meant, hiring a public relations professional to really get me out there in interviews and things of that nature. So I walked the gamut with that. But about 2013, I had gotten a lot of requests of individuals who wanted help. Tell me how you wrote your book. I have an idea for writing a book. What do I need to do? What steps do I need to take? And I just had a moment where I said, you know what? Let me see if this can really be something for me. Let me see if this is an opportunity to create a business. Now, mind you, Mel, I had no interest in entrepreneurship. I was working a very good job in healthcare. And I was making very good money. I had great benefits. I was just an author. But I also researched and saw that there was no one in South Carolina that was offering a service remotely close to that. And so I saw it as an opportunity to not only create a business, but to meet a need. And so from there, I've helped people. I have my next book after my first one was a fiction novella because I said, well, if I'm going to help people, I want to not just be able to help people that's writing life stories. I want to step into science fiction. I want to step into children's books. I want to step into fiction. And so I tried my hand at fiction and I developed characters and I developed a scene and a plot. And I wanted to have that firsthand experience so that I could walk an author through that who was actually interested in working with me. I was also leading a women's empowerment movement at the time titled Self-Assured Woman. And so during that movement, I produced an anthology telling the stories of 8 women. I've also did a book about virtual communities because I believe in virtual communities, especially not knowing that we would be headed to a pandemic some years later. So just that power of connection, even in the virtual space. So I did that. I wrote an author success principle of what I've learned over the years that can specifically help authors be successful in building their platform. And then my latest book, Ink Pen Diva, was actually me telling my entrepreneurship story. I told a lot of stories over the past 10 years, but I'd never told that one. And so this was my opportunity to inspire other women who would have an opportunity to be in my presence or not, but to share my entrepreneurship journey in the hopes that there is the understanding that you are living a very real life behind the scenes as you are actively building your business.
Wow. How do people buy your books?
So they actually can head to my website, inkpendiva.com, so that they can connect with me there. It is also available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever you may find whatever your favorite electronic retailer is to purchase books.
And do you write under the name of?
I use my name.
Okay.
I use my name. I have nothing to hide. I mean, even when I was in South Carolina, my abuser was still living there at the time. We still lived in the same city, but I had enough courage and strength to actually put my name on the cover of the book and tell the real story.
Okay, that sounds absolutely great. I love that.
Thank you
So,
so much.
what would you like to leave our listening audience with? You have such a wonderful story. You have a great business going. You're now living here in Vegas. What part of South Carolina were you living in?
I was living in Columbia, South Carolina, so where the Gamecocks are, go Gamecocks.
Go Gamecocks, go Gamecocks. All right. What
Yeah.
would you like to leave our listening audience with?
I think for me, there is this quote by Toni Morrison. She's one of my favorite writers, and she said, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story." And I believe that, as especially for African Americans, you know, we grew up in a time where we couldn't read, where we couldn't write, where libraries were not open to us. Our stories were passed down through families and generations. And so one of the things that I would like to leave is, if you're feeling led to publish your story, then do it. We need to do a much better job of chronicling our stories, telling our lives, telling our history, so that we can inspire the next generation and then create a living legacy.
Ladies and gentlemen, our stories are magnificent.
Yes.
Our stories are
Yes.
inspiring.
Yes.
Why? Because nobody has overcome
Yes.
like we have.
That's right.
Everybody wants
right.
to hear a great story about overcoming. And let me tell you something. We have moms and grandmas and grandparents who overcame
Absolutely.
mountains of challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mountains of challenge.
Yeah.
You have a story.
Yes.
You have a book in you. You
Yes.
have 2 or 3 books in you.
Agreed.
That's it. And if you don't think you have it, listen, if you just have a nugget, you give Tamika a call.
That's
she'll,
right.
she'll help you explode that into a book. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here. You've been listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, your host, and until next time, keep it 100.